All right, I'm going to play every section one time from left to right. And if it's got a complicated fill, I'll go back and break it down a little bit. Otherwise, if it's written to play it multiple times, just go back and play it where it's written. Section A, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Section B, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E, a 2 and a 3 and a 4 E and a... Let's look at the fill. 1 E, a 2 and a 3 E and a 4 E and a... 1 E, a 2 and a 3 and a 4 E and a... 1 E, a 2 and a 3 E and a 4 E and a... Section C, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a... On that fill, I think of an accent on the 3, 4, on the snare, and then I do diddles on both of the toms. So 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a... Section D, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a... You'll know you're doing that one right when the sticking on the fill works like this. Lead with the right. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and up. So you'll go 3 E with the left and a 4 E and up. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a... Section E, 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and... Now you'll notice when you play bar 2 the second time, you're adding a kick after the 4 so that it moves through like this. 4 and 1 and 2. So you'll have to watch for those embellishments that are added the last, like the second time or the third time, and make sure you add those in when you play through. Section F, 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 E, a 2 E, a 3 E, a 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and up. Now on that turnaround on the fourth bar, it's and 2 and 3 and 4 and up, and 2 and 3 and 4 and up. And 2 and 3 and 4 and up. Section H, 1 E and a 2 E and a Now go back and do the verse, the first bar again, and then skip to the blue bar. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a... And I chose this sticking because you'll notice at the end it gets you ready for the crash on 1. 3E and a 4E and a 1. 3E and a 4E and a 1. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1. Then you'll go back and you'll do the verse and then the yellow bar. Section I. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3 and 4E and a 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 2, 3 and 4. Section J. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and. So what makes that tricky is those 3 kicks on and, 4 and then the placement of the flam on 1 instead of a crash. Let's look at this one again, left to right, 1 time each. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and. Section K. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1E, a 2E, a 3E, a 4 and 1. Section L. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4. It's really hard to resist putting the 1 and the 3 on bar 4, but technically you shouldn't have the 1 because on the album it's, if I do the last 2 bars on the album, it goes 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4. Section M. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 2 and 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 into the fill. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Then you'll go into bar 3 7 times. 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4 and 3 more times into the last bar. 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4 and. So if I string the whole thing together one time, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4 and. You're going to add an extra kick between 2 and 3 on the and. So you didn't do this last time when you did it 7 times. You're going to throw it in this time. It's going to sound quicker. 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4 and 7 times into the fill. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Or if you did it as it's written, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Section P, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Section Q with sticks so you can hear the articulation better. It's tricky because when you end with the you want to give it room to breathe, but you have to immediately crash. So it goes one. So it sounds like this without counting. And if you count it, it's 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1. All right, then you'll move into bar 2. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3 and 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So this section, as you play it across, is very busy, partly because bar 1 is hard. Bar 2, you go once, then bar 3. Back to bar 2. Bar 4. Bar 2, 3 times. Bar 3, 1 time. Bar 2, 3 times. Bar 3, 1 time. Bar 2, 3 times. Bar 3, 1 time. Then the next section. So you really have to watch how it's written to know where you bounce back and forth in the sheet music. So if I did each part once from left to right, it would go 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3 and 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Section R, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Now this part's tricky because up to this point in the song, we're used to going 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Here, we go 1E and then jump into the fill straight from there. 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So you kind of have to train your brain on this section. So if I did it once each time, you got to train your brain on that 1E and jump into the fill. So 1 time from left to right. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Let's break that fill down just a little bit. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So it's just kind of a back and forth, right? 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Section S. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and. Section T is a little bit tricky because it's going to play the first 2 times like this. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and. Now the third time you're adding the extra kick right here. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and that leads you into 1E, a 2E, a 3E, a 4 and 1. So played all the way through, it would go like this. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1E, a 2E, a 3E, 4 and 1. All right, section U, 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So those last 2 bars are a little bit busier than what we're used to because they keep that 1, 2, 3, 4 consistent on the hi-hat, and we haven't always kept it. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And in other parts, we've cut some of those notes on the 1 or the 3 out. For this part on the album, they're all there. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Section V is a little different than what we've heard up to this point. You're used to bar 1, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and. But the second bar is like its own fill in and of itself. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you have to pay attention to how that's written and not just play what you want to play by ear, because it is slightly different. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Into the bridge. 1 and 2 and 3 and the 4 and the 1 and 2 and 3 and the 4 and the 1 and 2 and 3 and the 4 and the 1 and 2 and 3 and the 4 and the 1. And I try to end on a flam there, just to bring some nice closure to the song. 1 and 2 and 3 and the 4 and the 1. 1 and 2 and 3